On March 16, 1992, 24-year-old Tony Bledsoe left his home in Arcadia, Indiana, with $8 in his pocket and an eighth of a tank of gas in his gray 1971 Oldsmobile Cutlass. He was a father of 3 young children and had told his wife he would be back. He never returned. His wife reported him missing that same day, and what followed would become one of Hamilton County's most disturbing cold cases, one that would take 33 years to see movement toward justice. Less than 3 weeks after Tony disappeared, on April 3, 1992, a grim discovery was made in Putnam County, Indiana. Human remains were found at a dump site on County Road 900 West, just north of US Highway 40. The body had been severely mutilated. The head, hands, and feet had been removed. Without these identifying features, investigators had no way to determine who this person was. The remains were cataloged, and the case went cold. For 26 years, this body lay unidentified in the records of law enforcement, while Tony Bledsoe's family lived with the agonizing uncertainty of not knowing what had happened to their loved one. The breakthrough came in 2018. Through DNA testing, the remains found in that Putnam County ravine were positively identified as Tony Bledsoe. After 26 years, his family finally knew he had not simply disappeared. He had been murdered. But identifying the victim was only the first step. Investigators still needed to determine who killed him and why. The investigation gained momentum on March 14, 2018, almost exactly 26 years to the day after Tony vanished. Someone came forward with information that would crack open the case. This tipster told police that a man named Thomas Anderson, also known as Tommy, had once told a story about witnessing another person murder Tony Bledsoe. According to this tip, Anderson had described in detail how the murder victim's body had been dismembered, with the head, hands, and feet cut off and placed in a bucket filled with concrete. These details matched exactly what investigators knew about the condition of the remains found in 1992. Thomas Anderson Jr. was 53 years old and living in Arcadia when investigators began to focus on him. As police dug deeper, more witnesses came forward. In the fall of 2024, one of Anderson's own family members testified before an investigative grand jury. This family member told the grand jury that Anderson had once confessed to being involved in killing Tony Bledsoe alongside another individual named Andy Emmert. The family member's account included the same disturbing details about dismemberment that the earlier tipster had reported. Confronted with these allegations, Thomas Anderson spoke to police on 3 separate occasions. According to court documents, he eventually confessed to playing a role in Tony Bledsoe's murder. Anderson's account painted a picture of a violent confrontation that had its roots in criminal activity involving stolen cars and car parts. Anderson told investigators that he and Andy Emmert were involved in a car theft operation. They had stolen a vehicle in Racine, Wisconsin, and brought it back to Atlanta, Indiana, where they stripped it for parts. Anderson said that Emmert had traded the stolen stereo equipment from this vehicle to Tony Bledsoe in exchange for auto parts. When Bledsoe discovered that the parts he received were stolen, he became angry. He demanded that Emmert return his auto parts and threatened to go to the police. On March 19, 1992, Anderson said he accompanied Tony Bledsoe to Andy Emmert's house on State Road 19 in Noblesville. They were going to retrieve Bledsoe's car parts. According to Anderson's statement to police, this is where the murder occurred. Anderson claimed that Emmert shot Bledsoe in the head with a shotgun. He said he then witnessed Emmert stab Bledsoe multiple times with a knife. Anderson admitted that he also participated in the attack, telling investigators that he struck Bledsoe with a baseball bat. The dismemberment that followed was methodical and calculated. Anderson told detectives that Emmert cut off Bledsoe's head, hands, and feet. These body parts were placed in what Anderson described as a pickle bucket filled with concrete. To make the remains even more difficult to identify, Anderson said they spray-painted Bledsoe's body parts black. The torso and the bucket containing the other body parts were transported west toward an area with Green in the name, which investigators believe was likely Greencastle in Putnam County. The body parts were dumped in a ravine and covered with pieces of wood to conceal them. In October 2024, Indiana State Police executed search warrants at Andy Emmert's property. Emmert was at that time employed as the utility superintendent and building commissioner for the town of Atlanta in Hamilton County. During the search, investigators removed 2 classic Oldsmobile Cutlass vehicles from his property, the same type of car Tony Bledsoe was driving when he disappeared. Detectives also recovered a knife from a safe in Emmert's home that matched the description Anderson had provided. The Atlanta Town Council placed Emmert on administrative leave following the search, though he was later reinstated in November when the town experienced difficulties with its water system and needed his technical expertise. However, after Thomas Anderson was formally charged with murder in May 2025, the Atlanta Town Council held a special meeting on May 31st and voted to terminate Emmert's employment. On May 20, 2025, 33 years after Tony Bledsoe vanished, Thomas Anderson Jr. was arrested and charged with 1 count of murder. At a press conference, law enforcement officials and prosecutors announced the arrest as a significant breakthrough in the decades-old case. Hamilton County Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Josh Kocher stated that the filing of charges was a testament to the relentless work of law enforcement and their unwavering commitment to justice, emphasizing that no matter how much time passes, they would never stop seeking accountability for victims and their families. Bledsoe's family experienced a mixture of emotions. Justin Robinson, Tony's son, had lived his entire life knowing his father had not simply abandoned the family. He said, "His father didn't leave. His father didn't just leave." After 33 years of uncertainty, the family was finally getting answers and perhaps justice. Police reported that the family was emotional upon learning of the arrest. Tony Bledsoe left behind his wife, his mother, his father, 3 children, and 3 siblings, all of whom had lived with questions for more than 3 decades. The Tony Bledsoe case demonstrates both the persistence of modern law enforcement and the power of witnesses who eventually come forward with information. Investigators continue to ask anyone with additional information about this case to contact Indiana State Police. Tipsters can remain anonymous. The case serves as a reminder that cold cases are never truly closed and that advances in technology combined with determined investigation can bring justice even decades after a crime occurs. On the evening of February 4, 1986, 17-year-old Shondra Denise May left her job at McDonald's in Forest, Mississippi, and began the 12-mile drive home to Pea Ridge. She never made it. Her disappearance and the murder that followed would haunt Scott County for nearly 4 decades, becoming one of Mississippi's most notorious cold cases. In April 2025, an arrest would finally be made, but justice would remain elusive in ways no one anticipated. Shondra was a senior at Leake Academy. That Tuesday evening had been slow at the McDonald's on Highway 35, and her manager decided to send some employees home early. Shondra clocked out at 7:24 in the evening, but stayed a few minutes longer to see if business would pick up. When it remained slow, she gathered her belongings and headed for her car. Before starting the drive home, she stopped at a store called TG&Y to purchase a Valentine's card. After that, she began the journey north toward Pea Ridge. Shondra's mother, Janelle May, expected her daughter home around 8 o'clock. By 8:15, when there was still no sign of her, Janelle began to worry. She started making phone calls to try to locate her daughter. The calls revealed nothing. Janelle and her husband Richard, along with their 18-year-old son Tim, began searching for Shondra. What they found was deeply troubling. Shondra's car was discovered on the gravel road that led to their driveway, stopped just shy of reaching home. The keys were in the ignition, the engine was off, the radio was still playing, her purse was inside the vehicle, but Shondra was gone. Tim May was working that night at a grocery store in Carthage when his mother called with the news. He would later recall that people used to think he and Shondra were fraternal twins because they were so similar in size and age. The bond between them made her disappearance even more devastating. Law enforcement was notified immediately, and a massive search began for the missing teenager. For 3 agonizing weeks, the community searched for any sign of Shondra May. There were no clues, no witnesses, no leads. The family could only wait and hope. On February 26, 1986, a fisherman made a grim discovery in a creek near Bolton in Hinds County. It was Shondra's 18th birthday. The body found in the creek was hers. She was nude, bound with industrial tape, and wrapped in plastic garbage bags. An autopsy revealed she had been sexually assaulted. Authorities determined that she had likely been kept alive for at least a few days after she was kidnapped before being killed. The cause of death and the condition of her remains indicated she had not suffered serious physical trauma beyond the sexual assault and restraints. The investigation into her murder began immediately, but in 1986, rural Mississippi law enforcement lacked many of the forensic tools and investigative protocols that would later become standard. DNA evidence was not yet widely used in criminal cases. Modern death investigation procedures had not yet been implemented across the state. Cold case investigations that successfully solved crimes decades later were exceedingly rare in that era. Reuben Weeks emerged as a suspect early in the investigation. He was questioned by authorities, but there was insufficient evidence to charge him at the time. Weeks had a criminal history and was known to law enforcement. In 1991, 5 years after Shondra's murder, Weeks was arrested in Jackson, Missouri for kidnapping and raping a woman who worked as a clerk at the motel where Weeks and his family were staying. The details of that crime were strikingly similar to what happened to Shondra May. The Missouri victim told police that Weeks had stalked her and waited for her. He flashed his lights at her on a rural road, and when she pulled over, he pulled a knife on her. He forced her into his car, drove her to a neighboring county, and raped her near a barn. He bound her with tape and left her there after she begged for her life. The tape used in the Missouri case was similar to the tape used in Shondra May's case. After admitting to the Missouri crime, Reuben Weeks was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Court records showed that both Shondra May and the Missouri clerk had been taken from their cars, raped, and restrained with tape. The similarities were undeniable. Authorities in Mississippi brought Weeks back for additional questioning, but they still did not have enough evidence to charge him with Shondra's murder. In 2004, while still incarcerated in Missouri, Reuben Weeks demanded a DNA test. That test confirmed his guilt in the Missouri case. Years later, that same demand for DNA testing would prove crucial in linking him to Shondra May's murder through new forensic analysis. The case remained cold for decades. Shondra's parents, Richard and Janelle May, lived with the agony of not knowing who killed their daughter. They visited law enforcement offices frequently in the early years, always hoping for progress. Richard May would stop by the local newspaper office regularly, anxious for any updates. The grief was palpable. Shondra's tombstone in the small rural Clark Cemetery in the Pea Ridge community became a haunting symbol of the unsolved case. The heart-shaped headstone was inscribed with her date of birth, February 26, 1968, but the date of death read only February 1986. The blank space where the specific date should have been left was intentionally incomplete. Because no one knew exactly when during those 22 days of captivity Shondra had died, her family could not complete her grave marker. Both of Shondra's parents died without ever learning who killed their daughter. Tim May was left as the sole surviving immediate family member to carry the burden of seeking justice. When asked what he needed, he said simply, "Closure." In 2021, a group of retired investigators came together with a determination to solve the case.
They worked alongside Scott County Sheriff Mike Lee, who had been 16 years old when Shondra disappeared. Sheriff Lee made a promise when he was elected that he would solve Shondra May's murder. The team worked with the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation and other agencies to re-examine the evidence. They re-interviewed old witnesses, which led to new information. Time, science, and witness statements all contributed to progress in the case. By October 2024, Sheriff Lee announced that investigators were closer than they had ever been to solving the case. He indicated they had identified witnesses and gathered sufficient evidence, but did not yet name a suspect publicly. Then, on April 29, 2025, 39 years after Shondra's murder, Reuben Weeks was arrested. He was 63 years old and living at an RV park in Madison County. Sheriff Lee arrived with a convoy of law enforcement officers. Weeks had been fishing just the day before his arrest. He requested his wheelchair to get to the squad car that took him to jail. He was charged with kidnapping, rape, and murder. Sheriff Lee credited networking and finding people willing to talk for the breakthrough. 3 witnesses who were present during events connected to the crime provided crucial information. The sheriff said the case just fell together. In October 2024, DNA testing confirmed a match linking him to evidence collected in 1986. Red hairs recovered at the scene had pointed to Weeks, who has red hair. His pattern of behavior in the Missouri crime mirrored the details of Shondra's abduction perfectly. The DNA results Weeks had once demanded in the Missouri case helped seal his connection to Shondra May's murder. At the scene of his arrest, Weeks denied any guilt or involvement in the May case. Sheriff Lee made it clear that the investigation was not over. He warned that if anyone else was involved in the case, they should not feel safe just because one arrest had been made. Authorities indicated they were still looking into whether anyone had assisted Weeks or had knowledge of the crime. Weeks appeared in court on December 2, 2025, with prosecutors arguing he should remain in custody without bond. The Scott County Sheriff's Office indicated they hoped to release more details about the case in the coming months. Then, on a Saturday in December 2025, Reuben Weeks died while in custody at the Scott County Jail. He was 63 years old. The cause of death was unknown at the time, and authorities stated there was no foul play suspected. The Mississippi Bureau of Investigation took over the investigation into his death since it occurred while he was in custody. For Tim May and his family, the arrest had represented the closure they had desperately needed. Tim's parents had not lived to see it. In the 39 years since Shondra was murdered, she missed her father walking her down the aisle, her mother holding grandchildren, and countless other joys of life. She never even had the dignity of a complete inscription on her tombstone. With Weeks's death, the possibility of a trial and definitive answers died with him. The case that had haunted Scott County for nearly 4 decades reached an ambiguous end, leaving questions that may never be fully answered.